Monsters. Thank you for joining us for this podcast episode. Of course, our weekly episodes double as weekly gatherings for our very own true crime cult.
That's right, but not to worry. You've landed in the cult with all the baby goats and none of the brainwashing.
If you're just finding us now, allow us to introduce ourselves, your charismatic leaders. I'm your favorite crime-solving pixie, Angelina, and I'm here with my BFF, who can be best described as the real housewife of true crime, Aurora. How are you doing this week?
I'm good. I'm coming in from the set of Game of Thrones, King's Landing, Croatia.
So cool. you can practically see this out your window, am I right?
Yeah, you can see King's Landing from outside of my hotel window. It's so marvelous for like a nerd like me that just loves the show. And
you just get to have like really just like magical walks every day.
It's just really magical. And it's low tourist season right now. So like the town is just a ghost town. Like there's nobody else here, which is really spooky. I'm actually going to do a ghost tour this weekend and learn some of like the ghost lore about it.
Wow, you should share some of that stuff with us after.
I certainly will. And it's fun because like all of the locals, like when you go out to eat and stuff, they're like, oh yeah, like everybody just likes to come here for like the Game of Thrones tours. And I'm like,
and you're like,
100% going on a Game of Thrones tour.
Yeah. You're like, just wondering where are those Game of Thrones tours taking place, you know?
That's right. Take me to it.
I have none of that. Out my window, I have, you might hear these tractors removing snow. Hopefully not, but they've chosen the best time.
I was wondering what kind of tractor was outside of your window when you mentioned it earlier, and I did not put it together that it might be a snow tractor.
Yeah, we have this whole system, which is kind of amazing sometimes in Montreal, but it's hard to keep up with the amount of snow that we get. But like they'll get rows of giant tractors that are scooping snow into these giant dump trucks. And then there's like giant snow blowers that are also going into the giant dump trucks. And they'll have a whole convoy of dump trucks that takes the snow off the island because we can't just have it all sit here or we would die. It's just that much.
It's too much for the tiny island to handle.
Yeah. So, and like after a big snowstorm, it's like I'm so glad I don't have a car because I go outside and every car is just buried and every person is just like swerving all over the road. And like, what the fuck? Can't park or get unparked.
It's terrifying, truly terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm, still hanging out indoors, but whatever.
Just because you tune into our show week after week, we like to think of you as honorary monsters. But if you'd like to be a bona fide card-carrying member, you can secure your spot in the MMN commune on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/MurderMurder.news, where you can choose your tier of support. To show you how much we appreciate you signing up, we'll give you an official title like Grandmaster of Goats. We'll send you a bit of murder merch so you can proudly display that you're a monster. And we'll even name one of our adorable baby goats after you. Our patrons also have exclusive access to regular Patreon-only content. At the moment, we have weekly newsletters so you can stay on top of everything that is happening in the world of MMN each week, all in one platform. We also do monthly special episodes, which are like deep dives into true crime subjects that don't necessarily fit with the theme of our weekly podcast episodes, but that we can't stop thinking about nonetheless.
The episode that we posted at the end of January covered the Toronto Circus Riot of 1855, which actually led to the foundation of the Toronto Police Force. We do enjoy getting a bit festive wherever possible, so maybe for February's episode, we'll take a look at something like a love triangle gone wrong or a sinister Valentine surprise. Stay tuned. We also take requests. So if there are any stories or subjects from the realm of true crime and spooky happenings that you would like to see us cover, just send us a DM on Patreon or email us at MurderMurder.news@gmail.com.
One of the reasons why I've always been attracted to true crime is that I spend a lot of time processing the worst thing that can happen and kind of planning my escape route if I were to be abducted or find myself on a scary Tinder date. But sometimes I get true crime overload, which leads me to setting up booby traps around my apartment like I'm Kevin McAllister, self-medicating with wine, and struggling with falling asleep.
I'm so glad that we talk about therapy so much in this community, and I've learned so much about cognitive behavior therapy from the work I've done and how I can use those tools to calm down when my mind is racing or imagining there could be a serial killer hiding in my closet. We've been using this great app, Nuna, that uses CBT methods in this cool chat function, which helps me get a hold of my thoughts and feel like a friend is helping talk me back to a more reasonable state of mind.
You can try Nuna right now to help with your mental well-being and get 25% off when you use our link to sign up. Just go to landing.nuna.ai/MMN or just click on the link in our show notes for your 25% discount.
Let Nuna help convince you that the noise you heard outside your door is probably just your cat up to their usual hijinks.
Now, before we dig into today's episode, let's take a look at some of the true crime stories that have been making headlines this week.
YouTuber and aspiring rapper Heather Morgan was arrested alongside her husband, Ilya Lichtenstein, for laundering billions in cryptocurrency. According to the Department of Justice, the two allegedly conspired to launder $4.5 million after hacking Bitfinex in 2016. At the time of the hack, more than 2,000 transactions were initiated. The transactions then sent the Bitcoin to a digital wallet which Liechtenstein controlled. The Department of Justice has managed to seize $3.6 billion of the stolen Bitcoin. Liechtenstein and Morgan are charged with conspiracy to commit money laundering, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, and conspiracy to defraud the United States, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison.
An arrest was just made in the 2017 disappearance of Akia Eggleston. Akia was 8 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance in May of 2017. And at the time, all signs seemed to point to the involvement of the father of her unborn son, Michael Robertson. Akia's family knew something was wrong when she didn't show up to her baby shower, and they immediately suspected foul play. Michael was just arrested in connection with her disappearance, but Akia has still not been located. We'll continue to follow Akia's disappearance, so keep your eye out on MurderMurder.news for any breaks in her case.
Next up, we have a quick commercial break, but we hope that instead of skipping ahead, you really consider checking out this show. We're not going to name names because they don't deserve any more clicks, but a bigger name in true crime podcasting heavily plagiarized this show that we're about to play the promo for. It's tough because this show had a fun and original idea that was just swiped out from under them, and they don't deserve that. So check out the promo, give their show a listen, and hopefully we can direct some listeners over to a smaller show with a fresh idea and away from the already more famous show that ripped them off.
We'll be right back.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Your world can change in the blink of an eye.
He walked into the bedroom and you know that she had been murdered.
So he's running up and down, screaming, "Oh my God, someone call 911. There are two men killing a girl."
I know my son, and he would not go that long without saying anything to anyone.
Safety can be an illusion and reality a nightmare.
So how do you steal a person, a grown person?
Unspeakable crimes can penetrate any small town, big family, pretty face, or innocent child. And in the wake of a loved one's murder or disappearance, there is nothing more cruel or desperate as silence.
Why won't people talk about it? That's another thing. People don't want to talk about it around here.
For the families of the missing and murdered, they gambled with their sanity as they lose hope in closure and settle for justice. That's where the cold case playing cards come in. In each episode of the Dealing Justice podcast, your hosts Jennifer Dubasek and Lori Jennings will spotlight one card from the cold case playing card deck. Hear the victim's story from the friends and family who knew them best.
Her mom will never stop fighting until she finds out what happens to her daughter.
Learn about the crime and help close the case. Welcome to Season 2. We're not just playing cards, we're dealing justice.
And we're back.
Now, before we get into our story, we just want to say that while our tone is light in the intro, we do take the topics we're discussing very seriously. We are best buds and we love chatting together every week and turning it into a podcast. We want to share that passion with you and to create a vibe where all of you feel like our best buds too. We joke about us friends forming a cult or commune, but that's not to diminish the severity of actual cult activity, which we do occasionally talk about in our weekly stories. We feel it's important to open up and talk about even the darkest aspects of humanity and the downright scary things that come up in the news. But we want to make it clear that our intention is never to sensationalize, and we always try to deliver these stories with respect to all parties involved or affected by the crimes we discuss.
We always post our sources in the episode description, so you can do some digging on your own if a story we present piques your interest. But you should know that if you ever feel we get it wrong, either in our tone or in the details of the case, we want to hear about it. We are more than happy to make a correction or give an update on a case we've discussed in previous episodes. So feel free to reach out to us at MurderMurder.news@gmail.com.
Some specific trigger warnings for this week's episode include sexual assault, disturbing descriptions of torture, and ableism. So if any of those are particularly sensitive subjects for you, you may want to skip this one and listen to one of our other episodes instead.
Today marks the 12-year anniversary of the torture and murder of Jennifer Lee Daugherty by the Greensburg Six. And we really hesitated to cover this case because we kind of try to avoid graphic descriptions of violence, especially just for the purpose of sensationalizing a case. Unfortunately, a lot of coverage about Jennifer's murder feels a bit exploitative. But at the same time, it feels important to go into some of the details on her torture because her murder was absolutely a hate crime. And this happened to her because we live in a society that tolerates bullying against people with intellectual disabilities. It seems as though Jennifer's death was a product of extreme bullying combined with the dangers of herd mentality at play. Before we get into Jennifer's story, our sources for today include appeals documents for Angela Marinucci, Trib Live archives, Wikipedia, Morbidology, and more. Check out our show notes for a full list of all of our sources.
Jennifer Lee Daugherty, who also went by Jen, was born on November 8, 1979, in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. She had two sisters and a stepbrother, and though her mother is unaware of her official diagnosis, Jen had an intellectual disability. She was in special education classes in school and was unfortunately often teased and bullied by other kids. Her mom remembers her coming home in the 5th grade with bubblegum in her hair that had been put there by a high school student. Jen sometimes struggled with social cues, and an example her mom gave was that she would sometimes dance down the street instead of walking, which actually sounds super cute, so fuck bullies. But even with mean comments from kids, her sister said Jen would just say it was their way of teasing her because they liked her. She generally took it in stride, and her family described her as being happy-go-lucky, and her quirks were part of her charm. Her mom described her saying, she liked to have fun. She was trusting. She made friends easily. She loved to dance, and she loved to sing.
Jen did talk to her family about wanting to be accepted and to be what she considered normal. To her, that meant having a husband who loved her, kids, a home of her own, and a job that she enjoyed doing. She loved scary movies, playing cards, wrestling, and football. The job that really interested her the most was being a mechanic. And can we just say how much we would have loved that for Jen? A shout out to anyone out there in a job that defies gender norms. We see you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen worked with her uncle as a mechanic one summer and really loved getting her hands dirty. She would come home with a big dirt streak down her cheek, and she would love showing it off, proving she had accomplished something. Jen had big dreams, but she did have some challenges she was working to overcome. According to her family, she had the mental capacity of someone in her teens, and she had trouble keeping a job. Wanting more independence for herself, Jen had lived in a group home and was working towards getting her own apartment.
She had been working months before her murder to finally get her own place and was just weeks away from moving out of her parents' house and into her own apartment in Mount Pleasant, Pennsylvania. Jen had recently turned 30 and was carrying out her plan for independence, which started with spending 60 days living in the Greensburg shelter for the unhoused. Jen was able to qualify for public housing, but she first had to qualify as homeless in order to receive funding for her apartment. Her mom was worried about Jen living alone, but she was 30 years old and really wanted to live on her own. The two had even gone shopping to pick out dishes and other household items for Jen's apartment in the weeks before her murder. Jen had recently made some new friends in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, while visiting their community center for counseling. She sometimes had a hard time making friends, so her mom was both ecstatic and terrified for her. Jen had recently made a Facebook post saying she was going to, quote, make a new start for myself and make some new friends.
Accounts vary, but some records say Jen left her home on February 8th, and some say she left on February 10th. Most newer news articles say she left home on the 10th, but court documents and older articles from the Trib Live state it was the 8th. And that timeline actually makes more sense with the estimation of the length of her torture. So we want to mention that in case you've heard this story before and you've always heard the date, the 10th, the 10th, the 10th. We actually think that might have been incorrect reporting, though it's been a little bit tricky to confirm that. With that in mind, we believe that on February 8th, 2010, Jen told her mom and stepdad that she was going to go stay the night at a friend's house in Greensburg. Her plan was to take the bus from her mom's in Mount Pleasant to Greensburg, stay the night there, go to a doctor's appointment in Greensburg in the morning, and then come home after. She left her mom a note saying, quote, I hope that you will have a good day at work, and I also love you very much. I will talk to you sometime later. Jen's stepfather took her to the bus station on the 8th. She kissed him on the cheek and got on the bus. Now, the testimony of what happened next varies quite a bit because ultimately 6 people were tried for Jen's murder, and her killers were all trying to displace blame from themselves to others. We tried to piece it together the best we could using court documents.
Jen had made a plan to stay with her friend, 27-year-old Peggy Miller. Peggy also lived with 17-year-old Angela Marinucci and 23-year-old Ricky Smyrns, who were in a relationship together. According to an appeals document from 2020, 20-year-old Amber Meidinger, 20-year-old Melvin Knight, and 36-year-old Robert Lauren Masters all met Jen at the bus station in Greensburg. Amber was pregnant with Melvin's baby at the time. The document also said that Jen had told Amber that she was going to marry Ricky and that the two of them had been flirting. Ricky's girlfriend, Angela, noticed the flirting and was jealous. Melvin and Amber were staying in a hotel together, and Angela went to the hotel with them to talk to Amber about the flirting. She called Ricky and said, quote, "You better not be with that bitch," referring to Jen.
Eventually, Jen, Angela, Peggy, Amber, Ricky, Melvin, and Robert all ended up back at Peggy's apartment, and Jen stayed the night as planned. We do want to mention that some reports suggest that this was the night of the 10th, and as soon as Jen got to Peggy's apartment, things took a quick turn and the torture began immediately. However, according to court documents and witness testimony, Jenny stayed the night at Peggy's as planned, and she tried to be intimate with Ricky that night. Ricky turned her away, likely as a result of the conversation he had with Angela earlier, and things didn't take a turn until the next day, on the 9th, when Jen decided she didn't want to go to her doctor's appointment. Jen went to take a shower, and in the meantime, Ricky told Angela that Jen had tried to be intimate with him the night before, and she responded, quote, "Nobody is having sex with my man." Just a secondary warning, we're going to describe the torture that Jen endured along with her sexual assault. It's really horrific, so if this is a sensitive topic for you, you may want to skip forward a bit or listen to one of our other episodes.
The bullying started by going through Jen's purse and stealing things from it, and then dumping mouthwash in her purse and on her clothes. The group quickly became more violent and started hitting her in the head with empty soda bottles. They choked her against a wall, and Jen fell to the ground crying. Angela and Amber brought Jen back to the bathroom and shoved her in the towel rack and began hitting her in the head and chest. Jen denied being interested in Ricky, and Angela shoved her into the towel rack again. Melvin dragged Jen to the living room, where Ricky joined him in dumping spices, oatmeal, and water on her head. After this, they made her go take a shower. After her shower, they made her undress in the living room and threw her clothes out the window. They cut off her hair and made her clean it up. Then Melvin put a sock in Jen's mouth and raped her.
That night, Angela left with Amber and Ricky to go get medication she'd left elsewhere, and Jen was left with Melvin, Peggy, and Robert. Jen took this as her chance to get out and attempted to leave. The group called Angela and Ricky, and they hurried back to beat Jen, then drugged her with Angela's medication. They all went to bed and left Jen in the living room without her clothes. In the morning, there was an argument between Jen and Angela over soda, and Angela pushed Jen to the ground and hit her. Jen managed to knee Angela in the stomach. Angela started crying that Jen had killed her baby, which was a lie, and Angela was actually not pregnant at all. But nonetheless, this upset, it's like the dramatics and theatrics of it, and like for nothing.
Yeah, wow.
But nonetheless, this upset Ricky, and he started shouting at Jen that if she killed his kid, why should he let her live? The group called what they referred to as a family meeting. They discussed that they thought Jen would make a terrible mother, which didn't really seem to have anything to do with the current situation. So I'm not really sure where that came from. But nonetheless, as a result of the family meeting, they agreed to lock her in the bathroom.
Amber hit Jen in the head with the towel rack, and they forced her to drink Angela's urine. They then escalated to mixing feces with urine and beating Jen in the head with the towel rack until she agreed to drink it. Jen threw up the concoction. They took Jen back out to the living room and bound her ankles and wrists with Christmas lights and then with a garland. The lights weren't working, so Amber suggested they make her look like a Christmas tree by drawing on her face with nail polish. The group called a third family meeting where they voted on whether or not they should kill Jen. They unanimously voted to murder her and decided the best option was to make it look like Jen had completed suicide. Ricky forced her to write a note saying, quote, "I haven't been very happy in a while, and I also feel that everybody who'd be better without me on earth. I will always love my mom and stepdad no matter what, and I will always love the rest of my family also. My nieces and nephew would be lucky to have a better aunt than me. I am done with life. Goodbye, Jennifer."
Oh, that note just like gets me. And we'll have a picture up on the screen for our YouTube of the actual note that she wrote, like just how panicked she must have been having to write it. And it sounds like they tried to make her write it in her own words, like she was processing having to say goodbye to her family.
Wow.
It's just really messed up. It's so sad.
Yeah. Just to anticipate this for so long just really adds to the just horrific nature of this situation. Just living in fear like that for such an extended period before being murdered. Ugh.
Right. Yeah, because this went on for 2 days.
Right.
Ricky then got out a knife and handed it to Melvin, saying, "You know what to do." Melvin and Amber took Jen back to the bathroom, closed the door, and turned off the lights. Melvin asked if she was ready, and Jen said she was. Melvin put something in Jen's mouth to keep her quiet, and he then stabbed her in the chest 3 times. He slashed her throat, and Jen fell to the ground gasping. Despite all of her wounds, Jen held on to life for minutes. Melvin called out to the others, "The bitch still ain't dead." Ricky came back to the bathroom and slit her wrists. Jen was still alive. Melvin and Ricky then strangled her with the Christmas lights. According to the autopsy report, Jen died from a combination of all of the injuries, but she ultimately bled out from the stab wounds to her chest, which penetrated her left lung and heart. The coroner estimated she likely remained conscious for a couple of minutes and then lost consciousness and died within 6 minutes. We've mentioned that accounts as to the timeline of Jen's torture vary, but according to court documents, she was likely held against her will and tortured for between 36 to 48 hours.
Oh my God.
I know.
The group called another family meeting, which, can we just mention how gross and casual that nickname was?
Ugh.
Yeah. At the meeting, they discussed how to dispose of Jen's body and ultimately decided to wrap her in plastic, put her in a trash can, and take her to the Greensburg Salem Middle School parking lot. What a plan.
Right.
They placed the trash can with her body underneath a truck in a snow-covered parking lot, and on February 11th, 2010, the owner of the truck found her. Jen's mom and stepdad had been worried for days when she hadn't met them at the bus station as planned after her doctor's appointment. They called her cell phone, but the calls went unanswered, though on her voicemail message, Melvin's voice could be heard saying that the caller had reached, quote, Melvin, Amber, and Jules. According to Melvin, the name Jules represented the name of their unborn baby.
Her parents heard on the news that a body had been found on February 11th and immediately worried it could be Jen. They called the police and were told to go to the police station to identify her. Her mom said she could barely recognize Jen from the photos taken of her. Her face was swollen and covered in red nail polish. And the photo she had to see was, of course, this horrific picture taken on a cell phone of her daughter having been beaten up so badly.
Ugh.
The plan the group made to make it appear that Jen had completed suicide was obviously very flawed. And Angela was brought into questioning by the police hours after Jen was found. Prosecutors sought the death penalty for all members of the Greensburg Six to the relief of Jen's parents. Since Angela was only 17 at the time of the killing, she was ineligible for the death penalty. She was tried as an adult and found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. She later had her sentence revoked due to a 2012 Supreme Court ruling stating that life without the possibility of parole sentences are unconstitutional for juveniles. However, on July 1st, 2015, she was resentenced to her previous sentence. We aren't quite sure how that works since she was a juvenile at the time, but we think she's right where she belongs nonetheless.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did talk about this before because you recall in another episode we were discussing whether someone who commits crimes like this should be sentenced as an adult, and if they could be sentenced to life in prison, if that's sort of unethical or if it's applicable in some situations. I think there's a little bit of both for sure. Like in this situation, it sounds like torture is especially heinous, and carrying that out over the course of days and against somebody who is easy to take advantage of. Like that sounds very sociopathic. So I think like that doesn't sound like someone that can be rehabilitated. But, in a lot of cases, obviously, when someone's a teenager, it makes sense for them not to be put away for life, or it makes sense for them not to get the death penalty. But
yeah, I agree. And I wonder how this works when you're dealing with something like a Supreme Court ruling. Like you figure that's hard law.
Yeah.
Like there's no way around it. So I wonder if that was factored in, like the severity of this crime, like why they were willing to toss out that ruling in regards to her. I'm just not quite sure how that works.
I guess there's always loopholes is the thing.
Yeah. And if somebody were to have that loophole work against them, like I just have no empathy for this girl. So
yeah, for sure. Melvin pleaded guilty to first and second-degree murder and kidnapping and was sentenced to death. He appealed his sentence in 2014, but it was upheld in 2019. In November of 2020, he again attempted to appeal his sentence, but his appeal was rejected. Ricky was sentenced to death for Jen's murder and also appealed his sentence. In 2017, a judge upheld his sentencing. In 2017, there was a stay of execution, and Ricky appears to still be in the appeals process as of today. Amber received a plea deal for testifying against the other members of the group, which spared her from the death penalty. She was convicted of third-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy, and was sentenced to 40 to 80 years in prison. Peggy, who had been a close friend of Jen's, pleaded guilty to third-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy, and was sentenced to 35 to 74 years in prison.
Robert also received a plea bargain for testifying against the other 5 and pleaded guilty to third-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 30 to 70 years. Jen's sister, Joy, read a powerful victim statement at trial about the loss of her sister. And, quote, "I didn't realize at the time how she did add to life until she was murdered. Her absence is indescribable. The music is gone. The sun still shines and the earth still moves, but the music is gone." During the trial, one of Peggy's neighbors testified to hearing the sound of a body slamming on the floor, but she didn't report it to police. In 2011, Senator Kim Ward proposed a legislation called Jennifer's Law, which would make it illegal for someone to witness a violent crime and not report it. We couldn't find any information on the current status of that legislation.
And that sounds tricky too.
Yeah.
I'm a little torn on the idea of not being able to witness a violent crime and not report it, because that kind of penalizes people who may also be victims or maybe fearing for their lives, as well. Like, you don't want retribution after you report something. And we know, like, a lot of times when you're aware of a violent situation, like, cop intervention is not necessarily going to improve things and might make things worse. So it's kind of, dodgy.
I agree.
Like in this situation, if she knew it was happening, obviously it makes sense. But you hear noises, you don't know what that is. It's neighbor scuffle.
Yeah, you don't always know what it is. And I had read in one place, but I couldn't confirm it, or I think I heard on a podcast that she heard them screaming, like, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you," or something like quite violent, but I couldn't find that in court documents, so I'm not sure if that was accurate. So I think it sounded like the reason why that law was going to be enacted is because this was a situation where she should have reported it.
She definitely should have, yeah.
But, it's also tough because we live in this age where we're now talking about the fact that not everybody can count on calling the police and expecting not to be shot. Yeah. And I think that's like a tricky situation. And until we have a great system in place for wellness checks that we can count on somebody not showing up with a gun, like at our homes, that we can't really expect people to endanger themselves.
Yeah. Like, it sounds like a situation,
and the other person.
Yeah.
We don't know that, like, they wouldn't have shot somebody in the home, possibly Jen. We've heard, like, many situations. Like, there was a case in Canada where a woman was in mental distress and the police officer, like, dragged her through the lobby of her apartment building while she was just in extreme mental distress. And, like, that shouldn't have happened. Like, we couldn't have counted on them protecting Jen either, unfortunately.
No. But sometimes when you arrive at the scene, it's hard to decipher, like, who is the victim and who's the issue, especially if there's some smooth talkers in the crowd. And, like, I don't know. It's very, very dodgy.
Right.
I could just picture, like, a neighbor, like, say, a black neighbor, feeling that if they call the cops, maybe it will come back on them. So they're afraid to call the cops. But, of course, if they don't call the cops, then they get charged with not calling about the crime. So it's like they're kind of damned either way in some situations, Like, we don't want people to feel trapped like that. That's
we need
scary.
Reform. People need to feel like there's, like, a safe place that they can call and actually get the help they need, for sure.
Yeah, and there needs to be, like, government funded organizations that deal with things like domestic violence or just violence in the home that you can call and count on. Yeah,
absolutely.
Anyway, that is the horrific torture and murder of Jennifer Daugherty by the Greenburg Six. And a reminder to all of us, the harm of bullying and the displacement of responsibility in herd mentality. It seems like Peggy and Robert didn't play a big role in Jen's torture, but they didn't do anything to stop it. And Peggy was good friends with Jen. At Peggy's trial, Jennifer's sister Joy concluded her victim statement with, quote, "You had my sister as a friend. She loved," in parentheses, Peggy Miller, and valued her. You didn't value her. You probably value a hairbrush more than you value her, end quote. Very sad.
So sad.
Mm-hmm. What have you been watching this week?
This week, instead of exploring this beautiful landscape I found myself in, I have locked myself in my hotel room and watched everything I could possibly find. That was
endless hours of television.
Endless hours of television just for you. You're welcome.
Thanks for all the amazing recommendations to come. I'm sure you've got it.
I figured with all these like snowstorms in the US and in Canada right now, y'all could use some recommendations. So
for sure.
Let's start with Tinder Swindler. Have you watched this yet?
I haven't watched it. I did see your TikTok about it, and I'm definitely intrigued. I will definitely watch this one because like it's another, like I was just saying, torture blows my mind. And it's like another level of sort of disconnected individual that can pull that off. Same thing with these kind of like drawn out fraud cases and people just like pretending to just living as another person and just doing it again and again and having no remorse about that. No weird feelings,
Right.
even in like romantic relationships where, again, you're taking advantage of someone vulnerable, Oof.
Yeah, for sure. And this one, it's really well done. It's actually done by the creators of the documentary Don't Fuck With Cats, which of course is the story of Luca Magnotta. And I know like a lot of people weren't able to watch that because of the abuse towards the cats, which was like awful. And like they didn't show everything in that documentary. Like I watched it, but had like regrets about like I had to fast forward the cat torture scenes and whatever.
That moment is scary. Yeah.
It's bad. But like the documentary was really well done, and this was made by the same people. And it's just really heartbreaking for those of you who haven't seen it. Kind of as a brief summary, it's about this Israeli man who I think was born Shimon Hayat and Hayut. I'm not quite sure how to say that. And he is masquerading as the son of a Russian Israeli diamond guy, like billionaire diamond guy. I don't really know what the term
mogul
is. Like, mogul, like miner, whatever. And he would like meet up with women on Tinder. He's like handsome. He's charming. He would sweep them off their feet. Like they would just feel like they got to know him so well on their first day. And then he'd be like, well, would you like to go on a date with me on my private jet to like this 5-star hotel and like whatever. And like I've been reading some comments in some Murderino forums about how not knowing exactly what the story was, some Murderinos were watching it and like, wait, is this girl missing? Like, is she dead? Like, what story am I watching here? Like,
they're not sure what they're about to hear.
Like, yeah. And so like, the good thing is that nobody died. But like, it's the kind of thing I would have definitely fallen for. Like if I found myself on a date with somebody that like wants to take me on a private jet because I'm a poor and like as much as I hate capitalism,
you're like, just
and
give me a little treat, and then
I would like to go on a jet.
Yeah, and then unbeknownst to you, that jet is funded by the last woman that he swindled. So
exactly,
that's scary. Yeah,
and that's exactly what he did. He basically had this like pyramid scheme of women helping pay for like his new dates with new women to like impress them and make them think that he's this wealthy guy, not knowing that he's like robbing hundreds of $1,000s. Exactly, and actually, it's cute because some of them are now friends. In like they got together and they were like, let's get this guy, and now they're like buddies and they travel together and stuff. So definitely check that out and let us know what you think.
What a great way to meet a friend. I'm sorry, but imagine you meet your friend that way, and then like every time people are like, how did you two meet? You're like, well,
it is
like
quite
get ready
the story.
For this.
It is quite the story.
Oh my God. I think we should start making up stories like that when people ask us how we met.
I think like our story is already really cute. We had like the best meet cute.
That's true. That's true. It is cute enough on its own. Yeah, that's right.
And the other one I watched was After Party. Have you heard of this one?
No, not at all.
Okay, so it's great. If you liked Only Murders in the Building or Search Party and kind of like crime comedies, this is definitely
all of my favorite shows.
Yes. Yes, like it's made for you. You'll love it.
Awesome.
And the cast is just fantastic. It stars Tiffany Haddish as like the detective. Elliot from Search Party is one of the cops as well. David Franco plays a like a musician that had gone to like high school with all these like, normal people that are not famous. And it's like they're all going to this like reunion together. And the story opens with David Franco falling to his death out of his like mansion balcony. And they're trying to figure out if it's a like an accident or if somebody killed him. And like
it's
the
like
other
murder mystery comedy fusion.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Like Knives
I love
Out. And so it also stars like John Ralphio from Parks and Recreation. I have no idea what his real name is. It stars, let me think, the guy from Mindy Project, who's like a nurse, who's Mindy's best friend on Mindy Project, like the tall dude. I can't think of his name. And Ilana Glazer from Broad City is in it. She's so fantastic.
This is what a cast. That's amazing. I'm like so excited I'm going to start this tonight because it's I was thinking about the sort of second awakening of true crime. It's like at first when this became a trend and people like us that are like, oh, wait, what? Like murder and true crime is like a popular subject and it's all over TV and podcasts. Like that's amazing. We don't just feel like the one weirdo freak that like this stuff. And now it's next level because it's like all the best, coolest comedians are super into true crime also. And so they're making content like that. And it's just like the crossover that I needed. Just like super into all of that. So I'll watch this.
Definitely check it out. And then I'm going to make a TikTok this weekend. Keep an eye out for it where I discuss all the suspects, if you are watching, and which one I think is the killer right now at episode 4. So come check that out. Let me know who you think the killer is.
Amazing.
And let's talk about it. And the last thing I watched this week, there's actually like quite a few more, but like the last one that's like very true crimey
mentionable.
Was House of Gucci.
Yeah, I heard that was a little boring, not great.
Yeah, it's not by any means good. It's barely watchable, like in my opinion. I'm so sorry if you liked it. But like, I love Lady Gaga. I love A Star is Born. I loved her on American Horror Story. I think she's legit a good actress.
And both of the leads are great here. What's like Adam Driver is great.
Which P.S. I met his stunt double this weekend.
Does he look like him?
Yeah, he looks like him.
Oh my gosh.
He's also a stunt double for, I can't say who because I'm not allowed to talk about the show my husband's working on, but like he's a stunt double. He looks like a combo of like the two of them. I will tell you later, Angelina, but like he's very handsome and he's like very tall and like very charming and has like the best stories. But anyway, so like, the cast is good. It's, you got like Al Pacino, like whatever, but like all of their accents are just like different and not Italian. Like none of them sound Italian. Like Adam Driver's like going in and out.
And which Lady Gaga's parents are Italian, no? Like,
yeah.
So that's like a sad to really fuck that one up.
Yeah. So it's not good. She sounds very Russian. Like it's very like over the top. Like it definitely does not sound Italian. And then like the worst of the performances is Jared Leto. And oh my God.
Already. I already don't want to see him ever. But
I just like don't understand why they continue to let him act because it seems like his co-stars all have a problem with him. I know he was like pranking people like in The Joker and like taking things too far.
He's not nice to work with. He's not he doesn't come across as terribly committed to doing a good performance. So like you're just funding his weird cult and his like ego by hiring him. It's like, we don't need to see any more of that. It's sad. It was cool in the past.
Like he's like on a different wavelength. He thinks he's in a different film than everyone else. And it's like he thinks he's in this drawn out Saturday Night Live skit. And like he's being like, he's doing this like super extra accent like Mario Kart. Like it's Mario. And it's like, it's Antonio. It's me. And like,
I've got lots of meatballs.
Right?
He's just fucking
and like Chef Boyardee shit. And
hilarious.
then like he's using all these like idioms that don't make any sense that nobody would ever use. Like, I am going to soar like a pigeon. And it's like, nobody would ever say that. Like the rest of the dialogue for the movie makes sense. Like he's just so absurd. He does not fit in their world.
He lives on another plane. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And neither do we. And we don't want to know.
I don't want to.
Get him out of here.
Yeah, enough. So it's just not great. Like it's very long and they cover way too much grounds. Like I thought I was watching her murder plot, I can't think of her name, but whatever, like the wife of Gucci. Like it's like her plot to kill her husband. And I thought that's the movie I was sawing, but I'm seeing them first meeting, them falling in love, them
their
talking
entire
about
life
Gucci.
and every thought.
Now they're in a boat on a date. Now they're having children. Now they're at their daughter's birthday party.
Now they're drawing a fucking shoe, and we're going to watch every detail.
Every single detail. And like the last 5 minutes are the murder. And it's like, I came here for the murder.
Yeah.
As always.
That doesn't vibe with me. I feel like I'm going to skip that one.
Yeah, I would say skip it. I only watched it because I wanted to report back and make fun of it. Otherwise, I would have stopped it sooner.
Somebody had to do it.
I was like watching it with my husband, and we're just like taking turns. Like it's on me, not like.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. So, how about you? What are you watching?
Well, so I was watching the new Dexter. Have you watched that at all?
No, I did not watch like maybe the last season of Dexter just because I forgot it was on. Like it's one of my all-time favorite shows, and I'm going to come back to it.
The last season, like I've got to say, it did kind of go off the rails. But I think they did a nice job of bringing it back around because, we've had some distance. And now this is basically considered a whole new series. It's Dexter New Blood. It's not the other original series. Right. It's like a whole new setting. He's up northern New York in a snowy cabin setting. He's not like the crime scene investigator dude anymore. He's got a whole different life, a whole new persona. And I guess we're starting off with like he hasn't committed a murder in 10 years and he's just living as this dude. So now he's always, I guess, I don't know. Like he's always making friends where he shouldn't, and he's always got like the wrong kind of pals here. So like he's dating the chief cop in this town. Yeah. And then what I love
keep your
is
enemies close.
Yeah. And like I'm only a few episodes in, so I can't say for sure that this is what's going to unfold, but I do get the vibe that this is what's going to unfold. So like it's a cheesy trope for sure. But I've been wanting to see this in one of these current shows, which is like, when they just like all out, like almost satirize the like serial killer thing. And then you get like the spawn of the serial killer has like the bad guy gene and now he's going to be a killer too. Like I've been waiting to see that. And I'm like, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen on you? Is it going to happen on Dexter?
I thought we were going to get that in Mindhunter.
Yeah. But like, here we go. I think we're going to get it on Dexter. So that I am looking forward to watching. So I'm just
love that.
We're all digging that. And the other thing I've been watching is, bear with me, it doesn't sound like something that anyone would recommend at this moment because it really starts with at the scene of a pandemic outbreak. So it's luckily very removed from the pandemic that we are living. So it doesn't just seem like depressing or like, like TV is supposed to be a bit of escape. So this is really different. It's like the kind of pandemic that hits all in one day, like almost everybody dies. It's just like right bang. Yeah. So most of the show focuses on sort of 20 years later. It's the new society that they formed after the pandemic. And so there's a few people that were alive before, and then there's like new kids that were born since then. And now like they don't have the internet, they don't have power, but they're like doing a whole new thing.
It sounds awful. I choose death.
I mean, I don't know. I'm really interested. Like that's the one sort of pandemic subject that I feel is not too played out that I still like to think about sometimes is like, what are the new, future things that grow out of this, that like the changes in society or whatever. And so in this show, what's cool is that there's still entertainment and there's still bands and actors and like there's next to nothing else, but they're still doing that, which I find really cool. So the show kind of starts off where the pandemic breaks out in a theater. So our main characters are either actors or fans, and then those are just sort of the survivors and they're children and whatever that we follow. So it actually draws some cult elements. It draws some murder elements. It's like interesting navigating this in a hypothetical future society. So I've been digging it and would recommend. It's like the perfect level of creepy. I feel like the Dexter, the new Dexter, and the Station 11, which is this series, they have sort of a similar vibe.
Nice. That sounds great. I'm going to check both of those out. Dexter for sure.
Yeah. So it took some time getting organized this time, but we finally made our next few book club selections, which will take us right up to spring. So our first selection for February is a book called We Keep the Dead Close, A Murder at Harvard and a Half Century of Silence by Becky Cooper. I've already started, and I'm really intrigued by this book. I can't wait to chat with you all about it. So if you listen to our episode number 44, titled The Ghost of Harvard University, you'll recall the murder of Jane Britton, which took place in her student apartment back in the 60s. A mystery that turned into a long-time cold case, Jane's story was kept alive by rumors on campus until decades later when it was finally solved after student sleuth and citizen detective Becky Cooper reignited local interest in the case. So it's a really amazing story, and I'd say if you're a monster, it should be right up your alley.
We've had a few new faces RSVP to the Facebook event so far, so we hope to see some new faces when we all meet on Zoom on the last Sunday of the month. This month, that falls on February 27th. The Zoom chat will start around 1 p.m. EST and usually goes on for a couple of hours. It's usually a small group, so don't be intimidated. It's very low key, and you can chat and participate in the book discussion as much or as little as you're comfortable with.
That's enough murder for this week. If you have actually not yet met your murder quota, you can always get more on the OG MurderMurder.news, where we share the latest breaking true crime news every day of the week.
You can also find us on Instagram at MurderMurder.news, on Twitter at MurderNews, on TikTok at MurderMurder.news, and on Facebook, you can find our page just by searching for MurderMurder.news.
While you're on Facebook searching for MurderMurder.news, you'll also see our group pop up. That is the group that you'll want to join both to chat about murder with your favorite podcast hosts and fellow monsters, as well as to join our book club. All the info you need to track down our book selections, get reading, and join our monthly book club meetings is in that group, so you'll want to make sure you're a member.
Also, if you're looking to carry out a random act of kindness this week, why not give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast platform? Ratings and reviews help new fans find the show and also help us know what we're getting right and wrong with the show. Feedback is important, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Bye, friends.